if you would do something for me, I know Paul mentioned the whole thing about the blood sugar drop, and I want everybody to make your hand kind of like a little mallet, if you would, please. Make both of them into that, and start with your head. And just kind of like tap your head up and down, then take that and tap your arms. I'm trying to get all the blood away from your stomach. Okay. The reason I did that is because I'm very excited about sharing this information with you, and I want you to pay attention. So I want you to have blood in your brain so you can really listen. I have been to 4 EWB conferences before this one, and every single time it's a celebration of the positive impact that we have in communities. It's been fantastic. It's been great. It highlights our strengths, it generates more forward momentum, and all that is good. But in this conference, I'm so excited because EWB is stepping up to a new level of maturity in sustainability, because we're putting a spotlight on the projects that didn't go as we hoped. We are daring to fulfill both sides of the mission at once. Not only are we concerned with improving the quality of life in the communities we serve, we're also really trying to do education in a new way. And being a learning organization has a very specific meaning. Peter Senge says, learning organizations are those where people continually expand their capacity to create the results they truly desire, where new and expansive patterns of thinking are nurtured, where collective aspiration is set free, and where people are continually learning to see the whole together. That sounds like where we're headed. That sounds like the intention of EWB. Now, there are lots of different ways to learn, and I'm not going to talk about education. What I'm going to focus on is the one thing we all have that enables us to learn, and that is our brain. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do know that our brains are miraculous organs. They're responsible for our body's function, our contributions to the world, through our thoughts, our words, and actions. It's really, it's a fantastic machine, very intricate. But for the purpose of our discussion today, I'm just going to talk about 2 generalized operations. There's the small part of your brain that provides you with the ability to understand, decide, remember. This is the learning, thinking part of your brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. It's like working memory. Some people believe it's the crowning glory of evolution. And we won't talk about that, we won't argue that in this forum, but it is pretty remarkable. Like the RAM in your computer, not a whole lot of capacity, energy intensive, and it's where the magic happens. Then there's the part of your brain that's hardwired, the whole rest of it. And like our computer's operating system, it doesn't take much conscious effort. It's our limbic system, and it processes stimuli before it reaches our conscious awareness, constantly surfing the world for danger because it's focused on keeping us alive. So this is the part of the brain that persists in continuing to operate much as it did millions of years ago. As a result, even with all of the amazing potential in our brain and all of our development, we still see the world through this lens. Will it eat me, or will I eat it? Should I fight or flee, or should I approach and engage? There's a ton of new research being done on the brain. New fields like neurotechnology, neurolaw, neuroleadership, even neurotheology. But the piece that's relevant to us in this conference and in this organization is that our brain uses the same neural networks to process our social needs as it does to process our survival needs. Given the fact that the social aspects of our projects have such a huge impact on their success, this has really significant implications for the work of EWB. Basically, we experience the world, and our hardwiring determines threat and reward quickly. very quickly, within a fifth of a second, much, much faster than our thinking brain. And that provides us with an ongoing, non-conscious intuition of what's meaningful to us in every situation of our daily life. I won't go into a lot of detail, but since most of you are engineers, as I saw when we raised hands, I was surprised about that, I'll share 3 specifics about the brain operation when you perceive a threat. Not only is the hardwiring faster, there's a strong negative correlation between the amount of perceived threat activation and the resources available for the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex actually takes a lot of energy. It's one of the reasons why often they have candy on meeting tables, or like candy in the front of the room here, because our brains take that. They need that energy. But when you're under stress, you actually have less oxygen and glucose available for those executive brain functions. So that impacts your ability to process, to consciously process and think. So no matter how many degrees you have, when you feel threatened for any reason, it's harder for you to find smart answers because of diminished cognitive resources. Instead of guiding you with intelligence and strength, when you're under stress or you perceive a threat, your brain is working about as well as Homer Simpson's. Another phenomenon that results when we perceive a threat is our tendency to generalize more. So what happens when we generalize more is we make connections where they really aren't there. We think small threats are really, really big threats. We avoid opportunities just because they're different and we don't know. And we're more likely to react defensively. The last point I want to make is that there's an increase in the overall activation in the brain, which inhibits you from recognizing those subtle signals required for solving nonlinear problems. And I want to double click on this. When you're engaged in your normal life, this is the signal level of your brain. When you're engaged in your normal life, you're thinking, you're doing what you do every day, the level of signal's about here. When you're under stress, as you are when you perceive a threat, the signal is here. So maybe Paul's discussion of what's happening in the world is a threat. Well, that makes that's a pretty loud signal. So where do you suppose, what do you suppose is the level of the signal of your creativity, your insight, your inspiration? The answer to those elegant problems, way down here. It's very quiet. So when you're under stress, you miss all of that. That's the kind of thinking that's actually required to navigate the complex cultural and technical projects that you do at EWB. So why are we talking about this? There's 2 reasons. One, when you go to a community and you start talking with them about changing their water source or how they engage in some aspect of their life, you need to know you can be perceived as a threat. Number 2, the charrette sessions that we had this morning and will continue this afternoon, they're designed as learning opportunities. And at the same time, we know that that can be a perceived threat. Some people might think, well, folks who didn't necessarily want to have their projects looked at didn't apply. So while we say, well, wait a minute, the intention is positive, learning is life-affirming, why is that perceived as a threat? Well, just think about it this way. When you really open yourself up to have your performance evaluated as a way to improve, is that really welcome? Think about your grades. Are you like really excited to get your grades because you can't wait to see how you did or didn't do? Or your performance review at work. There's nothing that messes with you more than hearing that next Friday we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell you everything you're not doing well. Extremely threatening. So what I want to do is share with you a model that has been very useful for me in my work because it reframes the whole idea of threat.